February 28th, 2023 regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. Other individuals participating in tonight's meeting include representatives of the city's planning department, and the city attorney's office.
If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward to the lectern at the appropriate time when recognized and clearly print your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. Either switch it to the silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I'll ask our Planning Commission Recording Secretary, Kathy Zarnecki, to conduct the roll call.
Ms. Milala-Hawley?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Ms. Barakis?
Here.
Mr. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Mr. Bickner? Form present.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Mr. Krent makes a motion. Mr. Fox seconds it. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, we're ready for the roll call.
Ms. Milala-Hawley?
Yes, this time.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Ms. Barakis?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And next is amendments from the February 14th meeting. Does somebody wish to move approval of the minutes from the February 14th meeting? Mr. Faison, is that your hand up? Okay, he's moved it. Is there a second? This time I'll let Mr. Hudson second it. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Ms. Milala-Hawley?
Abstain?
Ms. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Ms. Barakis?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we have public comment for items not on the agenda. Is anyone here would like to speak to the commission for an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing no one rushing to the lectern, we will then move on to preliminary site approval. This is a preliminary site plan review for file number SPJPLN 2022-0025, a proposed Langview townhouses at the southeast corner of Livernois and Latonia, which is 4080 Livernois, section 15, currently zoned NN neighborhood node, node H. And since Mr. Carlisle has decided to go tonight, Mr. Savident, have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It helps if you start on the first slide and not the last slide. There we go. So this probably seems familiar to many Planning Commission members, but for those who are watching on TV for the first time, the site is located on the east side of Livernois, just north of Waddles Road, the corner of Livernois and Latonia. It's a 1.62 acres. There's an existing square foot building, a commercial building on the site. It was recently refaced. Looks very nice. They did a nice job. This application is for property. It's zoned node and multifamily residential. Neighborhood node. And again, focusing on the northern part of the property up here along Latonia, the applicant proposes to add 9 townhomes fronting on Latonia and sharing the balance of the property in terms of parking with the commercial building to the south. And access to the site will be from Livernois Road. December 13th, 2022, the Planning Commission voted 7-0 to postpone the site plan that was last before them. It was very similar in terms of the site plan, but there was some focus in terms of what they wanted to see moving forward. So they had 4 reasons for the postponement. First, they requested a 3-dimensional model, color rendering, showing the context of the building with surrounding buildings. 2, appropriate building materials showing what the applicant's proposing to use. 3, a revised design that would take away from the flatness of the face of the elevation of the building. And finally, 4, show the screen wall that would be located between the residential property to the east and the property in question. So for tonight's discussion, again, we've contemplated most of the site plan elements. We're going to focus on these reasons for postponement. So the applicant did change the application. They revised the architectural style. They added front elevation details to reduce the flatness of the face of the building, but they did not provide additional details regarding elevations and screen wall along the east property line. This is the rendering that was in the packet that you saw in December. There was a lot of discussion on how modern this design was. This is the elevation drawing, and what the applicant has done is come back with something more traditional in design, with again those elements that provide some take away from the flatness of the elevations. This is a rendering, and this is the elevation drawing that was in the packet. These are the 2 designs side by side, so you can see a comparison. Clearly, a more traditional design is proposed than what you saw in December. Remind the Planning Commission of the design standards in the zoning ordinance of 5.06E and 8.06. So we recommend the Planning Commission discuss the following items: elevations, screen wall along the property line, and the zoning ordinance design standards. And any questions? Any applicants here this evening?
Any questions for Mr. Sava, Mr. Faison?
So Brent, I have one question that I don't recall if it was asked last time. It's not one of the items you called out. The ingress and the egress to the site. I saw there's 2 curb cuts on Livernois, correct? So I was just curious, because in the packet, it looked like it was fairly narrow. So I didn't know if it was one way in or one way out, or is it 2 ways?
It's 2, both curb cuts are 2-way.
Okay. And it's per whatever the traditional width
Yes.
is of a 2-way curb cut?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Malawi.
Mr. Savadan, maybe I did not hear you correctly, but did you say the access to the site is from Livernois, but the townhomes are going to be fronting Litonia?
Yeah, when I said access, I meant vehicular access.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fox.
So, so the curb cuts that are there off of Livernois, are they going to be, I guess, is there any plan to expand them? Because I believe both of those curb cuts are currently there. Is there any plan to, well, I guess, does this plan expand the width of the existing curb cuts, or would they be the same width that they're currently placed?
I think they're proposed to be the same, unless, if I'm misspeaking, no, they're proposed to be the same. They're existing there today, and I believe they're standard. They meet
Okay.
requirements.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Mr. Savinant? One quick question, and make sure I got this correct. Mr. Carlisle's memo says the applicant has added 1 additional residential unit. Is that correct, or is that maybe a misprint?
They have not added a unit
Okay, all right.
since you saw it in December.
Okay, all right.
They added a unit from when it was a different application and denied. There was 8 units.
All right. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions from the commission, we'll bring up the applicant. I don't know if both gentlemen are going to speak or just one tonight, so. All right, Mr. Abathura, come on up, and you know the drill.
I already signed in. Thank you very much for seeing us today, and it's good to be back seeing everybody.
Good to see you, too.
Thank you. I was not at the 13th meeting in December, but I got to watch it on TV. And if you notice, we've changed the front elevation and the roof line of the building. The consensus of the board at the time was it looked like a 1930s industrial building, and the neighbors didn't like it, so we came into a more traditional. And in doing so, I took Mr. Tagle's advice, and I stepped out 3 units, 2 feet, to give it some offset, and then we put some front porches on it to break up some offset on it. So I think we have a more traditional unit that should fit well in the city. The screen wall is, talk to the neighbor, we were either going to go with a concrete wall or a cement wall on there, so we'll put the cement wall in for them. The area there. Last question, the 2 curbs will be designed and built to Oakland County standards. Whatever the county standards are is what they will be put in as. If there were now, they'll be Oakland County standards. Other than that, you know, we started this project during COVID, and our first meeting, I think, was on TV, and we were all one way or another. We had one project. We moved that one out, so it's been a good 3 years. So I'm here to answer any questions you guys may have.
Questions for Mr. No one? Oh, Ms. Barakas.
Good to see you again. I wasn't actually at the meeting either on December 13th, and just as an FYI, I actually liked the shed roof lines, and I would have, you know, but I guess I'm just one vote, so it wouldn't have made a difference.
Yeah.
But I happen to like that architecture, and I prefer it, but fine as well. As for the wall, did you offer the neighbors, I mean, I really appreciate it, and I think it's nice that you approach the neighbors and even consider what they'd like, but have you offered to them to do a very tight screen living wall with like arborvitae that are right next to each other, so it's basically a wall?
We have, and they want a definite wall that the neighbors people can't go from the parking lot into their backyard. So in between now and we build it, if we can talk them into a living wall, because we'd much rather see a living wall, we will do it. So however you vote on it, if we vote on it today, that we can go either way, whatever the neighbor wants, a living wall or a cement wall. But when I talk to them, they want a cement wall. And which on our side, we'll probably put some arborvitaes in front of it to hide it. But on their side, they will see a solid wall, which
Such a shame.
it is. And I agree with you. There's so much stuff you can do, but we're doing what the neighbor wants. And they're the ones that have to look at it. So.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Malahavi.
I like this one better.
Good.
It's traditional, yes, but it also has certain architectural elements. That front porch area, I really like that. I take it these are all for owning purposes. They will own it. It's not a rental townhome.
They are going to be, what I heard at another meeting, is going to be from lease to own. So we have an option to do from leasing to owning. So probably more than likely it's going to be owning. But I like that comment that one of the guys said a few months back, and it kind of fits the whole thing. You're kind of covered all the way.
Okay. Thank you, that was my question.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you repeat what he said, just for the record?
The curb cuts will be brand-new curb cuts going in, because the old ones are 1950s, and they're probably not in the right spot. But Oakland County's going to make us put what they want in, how they want it put in.
Great.
All right?
Yeah. Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none,
Okay.
thank you. Normally, we would, if there was anyone else from the public here, we'd invite them to come up, but seeing the room is other than the petition. Somebody like the floor resolution?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is my first time doing it, so apologies ahead of time if
no
I mess
problem.
up something. Proposed land view townhouses, southeast corner of Livernois and Latonia, 4080 Livernois, Section 15, currently zoned NN Neighborhood Node, Node H District. Resolution resolved that plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance Antonia, 15 zoned NN neighborhood node H district be granted subject to the applicant to the following. Don't believe there are any reasons we are
The only thing
proposing.
you might want to add on to that, the wall is along the east side.
Isn't getting added to this proposal. It will be a wall that needs to be along the south side of the property.
East side.
East side of the property, sorry.
Right. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll do it.
Yes, Mr. Krent makes a second. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Tagle.
I'm just looking quickly. Has there been a photometrics drawing showing the light distribution on the property?
There was a photometric plan.
Was there? Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Yes, Ms.
Yeah,
Barakas.
I'm a little bit confused, and maybe I misheard, but are we requiring a wall by the way you phrased it?
If that is according to what I heard from the applicant, if that is what the neighbors wanted, only then. If we can still get a living wall, then that would be a great addition.
I'm wondering if we could maybe phrase it so we're require a screening, whether it be a wall or a living wall. And then, because I think, I don't know, but this is discussion, right?
Yeah.
So we can discuss it, but I think if we as a commission agree to a living wall, it really, I don't mean to say it doesn't matter what the neighbor thinks, but at the end of the day, the applicant has offered to do what the neighbor would like, which is wonderful. But maybe when the neighbor sees maybe you put up the living wall and then say, if you want us to put a wall, we'll put the wall on your side, but we want green. And maybe they'll realize how tight you can make it. So people really, people can't pass through that if you make it tight. So just so he's not stuck building a wall that really nobody wants. I think we should leave that flexible. That's my thought.
Mr. Tagle.
Can't we just have the language in there per the zoning ordinance requirements? Because the zoning ordinance gives the petitioner flexibility as to what kind of barrier it can be put on, whether it's brick or concrete or a living wall. So that would be my suggestion.
Is that okay with the maker of the motion and the seconder?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm sure that the applicant will work diligently with the neighbor to make sure that their needs are met as well. So if that's acceptable to all concerned, any further discussion? Thank you, Ms. Barakas, for bringing that up. So seeing no further discussion, I guess we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Chair, can I ask for clarification on the condition? Is it going to be per Commissioner Tagle's wording?
Yes, to be in line with the existing ordinances.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Ms. Barakas?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations. All right, next on the agenda is a potential plan unit development application concept plan discussion east of Livernois, north of Square Lake, PIN 88-20-03-301-088 and 88-20-03-301-025 and then 024 and 023, Section 35, currently zoned NN Neighborhood Node Q and R1B, one family residential districts. And we're back to Mr. Sevenant.
Yeah, it's, I've been dealing with plan unit developments a lot lately, and
You have.
for those of you who watched council last night, I can talk about that later. But this is a potential PUD that the Planning Commission has seen before. The petitioner, the owner, wants feedback from the Planning Commission on this potential PUD. The Planning Commission is taking no formal action this evening. This is just an informal meeting to have some back and forth with Mr. Abathera. This is located at north of Square Lake on the east side of Livernois. It includes a total of 48 units with a mix of housing types. And there's other amenities proposed, such as the preservation of 2 homes. They're not listed, but they're old. And maybe we can talk about the value of those homes with the Planning Commission, if what they think about the potential effort of preserving those homes. Is that a good thing? Does it add to the character of the area? Does it limit his development potential by keeping them, or could he keep one and eliminate the other one? These are things we could talk about. The underlying zoning is R1B as well as neighborhood node. And I would remind the Planning Commission that a few years ago in this area here, the applicant was approved for 14 three-story townhomes. That was in 2018. Here you see the layout of the development. So in terms of the different housing types, he's proposing to preserve 2 existing single-family homes. I believe he's owned them for quite some time and rents both of them, but Mr. Abathura can confirm that. So 2 single-family residential homes, 4 single-family ranch homes, and those are up here to the north. 9 2-story attached with first-floor master. Those are also along the north here, but they're serving as a transition between this property and the neighborhood to the north. 27 2-story attached townhomes to the south, and 6 2-story duplexes along Livernois for a total of 48 units. So by my math, that's 5 different housing types in this project. We see a comparison here. On the left is what the Planning Commission last saw July 2020, and on the right is what's proposed for discussion this evening. And to kind of capture what the changes were, they reduced the height of all the units to not exceed 2 stories. There was a lot of comments about the Planning Commission being more receptive to 2 stories, and Mr. Abathura, that should be considered. Is the proposed plan consistent with PUD standards? Are there site plan changes the applicant should consider? And are there other considerations that should be discussed with the applicant? So this property is master plan neighborhood node. The Planning Commission, and especially the members of the steering committee, have spent a lot of time discussing the neighborhood nodes. This is one of walked it and listened to the neighbors' concerns, and the steering committee worked on a new description for the node, and it was presented to the Planning Commission. I'll just read what it says. Development in this area should be especially considered of the remaining historic asset of the neighborhood. When possible, adaptive reuse of existing historic structures must be considered before demolition or relocation of these resources. Low-intensity uses working in conjunction with one another to form a central neighborhood village, walkable and accessible, would create an ideal complement to the predominantly residential surroundings. It's ticking a lot of these boxes here, what he's talking about, if he can get the details right. It seems to me anyways. So not going to read all these standards, there's two slides worth, but you're familiar with these standards because we've dealt with PUDs a lot. But the requirement is that the development meet a sufficient number of the following objectives. They include mixture of land uses and innovative and creative site and building designs, et cetera. So just to help guide the conversation. And with that, it's very good to see Gary again before us this evening, and open it up for discussion.
Any questions for Mr. Savadant? Yes, Ms. Malahawi.
Mr. Savadant, the road, is there access to this property, to this PUD from Square Lake?
No, I believe, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, nod your head, it's EVA? Yeah, so the access would be would be here, Illinois, and this right about here there'd be a sign that says it would, in all likelihood, would never be used, hopefully, for emergency purposes. But in the event that it was needed, it would provide a second point of ingress or egress for emergency vehicles.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Faison.
So you mentioned the preserving the two homes that are historical, but my words, not yours, not designated as
They're
historical.
not designated, they're old.
So how do we know, or how would anyone know that they would stay in that state, going forward?
If it was approved as a PUD?
Yeah, if it was approved as a PUD.
So it would essentially be a condition of approval that the houses remain and be maintained and keep their historic character as part of the PUD.
So the person that buys that home would be constrained to keep it in that same form.
Or if Mr. Abathira owned them and rented them, either way. So it would, that would be one of the, potentially, and again, he's here soliciting feedback, if the Planning Commission and City Council felt that it was one of the public benefits of this property was maintaining and preserving these these older buildings, then that would be a condition of approval of the PUD.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Fox.
So two questions. First, so the intention with the single-family ranches, pretty much the intention, the entire unit at the moment is to rent them? Like, they're all going to be rental properties? None of them are going to be like purchased? Say that. Sold, okay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
We'll wait until we
Yeah,
have the
wait till we.
petitioner come up.
Okay, sorry, just wanted to clarify. I didn't know if that was specified in the application at this point. My other question is regarding the historical houses. Are these of any like significant style of architecture that is worth historical preservation, or is there any like, were they built by a particularly famous architect? I guess I'm just.
Lost. They're not designated.
Okay.
Or Mr. Hudson.
I don't know if this is a question or an observation, but at the corner of Square Lake and Livernois is PSC Bank in an old building which is presently for sale. With the NN node, either in the future, how would that be treated if someone wanted to come in and knock it down?
If someone wanted to knock down the PNC, the building on that corner site,
Yeah, do something else on that corner.
so I can tell you that the bank is no longer in the building. The building's empty.
Right.
And I can tell you that because my phone's ringing. People are inquiring about what the potential is for this. And, I've heard different pitches in terms of what could be there, from repurposing it as a bank to repurposing it as retail to even adding some type of residential on the site. It's running the gamut right now. I don't get into market prices. I'm sure Gary could tell you exactly what the asking price is. He knows every property in the city, it seems. But if someone were to acquire it, they would certainly have the right to knock it down and then come before the Planning Commission with an application for something that complies with the zoning ordinance.
What kind of zoning would they be looking at? Would it be retail? Would it be mixed use? Would it be commercial?
To all those. So as a neighborhood note, it would permit retail, it would permit mixed, it would permit commercial, it would permit office. There's a wide of uses that would be.
Okay. One more observation, I think. There's only one into this project from Livernois, and it looks like it's a spaghetti road if the guy is on the end near the emergency entrance for a fire truck. I'd like to see another entrance here somewhere. I just think that's onerous for people in this.
So what we do as part of the review is we submit this to the fire department, who read from the standpoint of emergency vehicle access.
Any other questions for Mr. Abbott? Seeing none, I guess we'll have Mr. Abbott come back to the lectern. And he's already signed in, so we don't need to have him do that again.
Thank you again for having me back up. I never thought of the two entrances and exits. If you remember when I had the 14 units approved, that strip that runs out to Square Lake is only 30 feet wide. And we had a hard time making a road go in there for those 14 units because the road is 28 feet wide and there's no room for sidewalk. And at that time, it was my only access and entrance into the place, and we had to figure out a way to make it work. Now with me moving everything up there, it has a regular entrance and exit onto Livernois. It's not much different than if you lived in the middle of a subdivision, you're driving down your street and turn to get onto Livernois. You don't have a straight shot onto a major road. But with that being said, my last time I was here, I think, was August, and we talked about this, and I know, Mrs. Malapalli, you talked about 0 3 stories. So I wiped out all the 3 stories. Mr. Hudson said very succinctly, no 3 stories. I wiped them out, and I listened to everything you said. Mrs. Parakis, you wrote me a letter stating that you wanted no 3 stories, and you wanted me to take my original 14 units and wipe those out also, which I did with this project. And I look back, I don't think a developer's ever gotten rid of a approval to build, and I have the plans at the sewer, water permits, everything ready to go. So I've listened to what you guys tell me on this project. We wiped out a couple units and put the park right in our project. So if you look at where my park is, it's almost centered from everybody's units that can go into it. I'd like to talk to Mr. Fox about the 2 existing houses. I know you weren't here the last time we spoke, but when I originally bought the property, I'm going to house is out, I'm going to put a street down there, I'm going to build 10, 12 houses and be done with it, like you see all the other developments going on. And I walked through that, and those 2 houses are built in And as Brent, many different products. I know in the city we're trying to get single ranch units. I got those up on the north side. I got the other ones on the first floor masters in there. And then I have 2 stories. The only thing I can't, what Mr. Buechner asked, was more open space. But when I went to a 2-story over a 3-story, I spread out a little bit more. So I lost a little bit of green space. I still fall within the guidelines of everything that the city wants on their green space. And I think I have a lot of extra parking in this site if you look at it. And I look at some of the other projects that have been in there, and they're using driveways and long driveways for extra cars. And I have legitimate parking spots that guests will be able to park in and use in there. I got parking right by the park. In fact, that's a pickleball court up there. So hopefully that gets some use and works out good in there. And I know, are you going to ask me again? This is for lease to own again. We're going to go through that area there. And Mr. Fox brought up another good question is, what happens to the existing homes and when I sell them? You know, I'm going to rent them now, but I'm going to sell them. And I do believe I should put something in PUD and in the paperwork that the house has to maintain as it is. I don't know what happens if the house burns down or a tornado hits it. I don't know what, I'd have to talk to my attorney, what would happen to the house then, if they would build it back the way condition was, or if they could build a brand-new house in there. That was a good question that he asked, and I'd have to figure that one out, and I'll let you know in the next meeting on that. Is there any questions that anybody has for me on this?
Yes, Ms. Mulally.
I like this plan, and especially the fact that you have the park there in the center. So that's one that I like. What is this green space that sits right
That's
at?
the retention pond.
Okay, got it.
That's the retention pond.
Now, I don't know when it was that we talked about this the first time, or at least I saw this the first time. We talked about the fact that the preschool is very close by, in fact, walking distance. We talked about the fact that the elementary school is also right there, and Smith Middle School is also right there. So everything is very walkable. So I think we also talked about the fact, and you agreed, that a lot of younger families now will want to potentially occupy these homes.
Correct.
Because of the attraction that everything is so close by and walkable and bikeable too in terms of middle school. And this is the closest neighborhood node to where I live. I'm just a couple minutes away from here. My two concerns, although I like what I'm seeing, my two concerns is, and you probably know this better, probably you can answer this too. I'm driving I'm driving west on Square Lake, and I want to make a right turn onto Livernois. You know very well that a center lane is very short, both on Livernois and on Square Lake. The first thought that came to me, and that is why I asked Mr. Savidant, there is no other access point for this. Potential traffic clog and movement in that area, because I drive every single day, many, many times through this intersection, and I can tell you, people are rushing through that intersection. Square Lake is 40 miles, and Livernois is 45 miles, the speed limit. But they are not. When I'm trying to make a left onto Livernois, traveling south, that is, from Square Lake, I'm so shocked to see how much that intersection is congested and the people are just driving through it. So for me, I'm just thinking out loud here because some opinions of ours, is there another access point to kind of these turns and the traffic getting congested because they're both two lanes?
The short answer is no, because we talked about that entrance onto Square Lake. I brought up your same questions to Fire now from engineering. He said, traffic, I don't like to do that to do. And even with projects like this, there's still not enough traffic to cause the problems.
So very recently, in front of Martell Elementary, because there was a traffic clog that was happening, they kind of just slightly went into, and then they widened that part of the road. It only stretches for a bit. I'm just thinking whether those kind of...
That traffic jam is 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon when all the buses come in and all the people have to pick up their kids instead of letting their kids walk. If kids could walk to school like they used to, there'd be no traffic, but every child has to be picked up in a car and only one kid per car. So that's why there's 15 minutes of traffic in the morning and 15 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I stand witness to that every day.
Yeah.
My last question before anybody else wants to take the floor. The two existing homes, you gave us an idea that they were built in 1910, and they're fairly good condition.
Very good.
And they are rentable properties, meaning to say that you have interest in people coming in there, correct?
Yes.
And you potentially see that happen even after all this comes to fruition, if this was to go ahead and get approved.
Absolutely. I myself wouldn't live in a house that's 110 years old because of the creaks and the crunches and all that stuff, but there's people that just love that, you know, Birmingham, Grosse Pointe, they love it, and they're out here, and there's not many houses like those two houses in the city anymore.
Where I'm coming from, I'm just thinking here, all of these are brand-new, very nice-looking townhomes or single-story ranches, and then I don't want those two existing houses to just stand there and be not occupied. I'm just thinking out loud from that point, the rental capacity for those homes.
Because as I listen to everybody, they want to keep the old Troy in that corner there, and two old houses is keeping the old Troy there. So I got to believe they're going to be, whoever I sell them to someday are going to maintain them as the old homes, because they're going to buy them wanting to keep that old look.
Absolutely. Okay.
I can't see them going in there and put new vinyl siding on them and something like that. They're going to keep all the decorative woodwork that's on them. And
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I would prefer that. Thank you.
Mr. Faison.
Yeah, following up on that, to your point about people saying they like the old Troy, I was one of the planning commissioners that walked through and heard that directly. So I was curious, if you maintain the two existing historical ones, what will the townhomes in the middle look like? Will they be purely modern, or will they be
They're gonna be-
split off of the older ones?
I'm going to make them look old. So common brick, and my architect's going to do it to make it feel like it was built a long time ago.
So you up and down Livernois, you're
Yes.
doing a similar look and feel.
Yes, it won't be the same as the interior ones, but the exterior ones, when you go down Livernois, it'll look like, wow, I don't remember those being there for 50 years.
And then you hit my next question. So the ones in the interior, you would have different
Yes.
architecture.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fox.
So, a couple of things. First off, I appreciate the explanation regarding the historic homes. Admittedly, I do appreciate the idea that it's you as a developer that is more interested in preserving that than it is like some kind of outside entity required to do that. In terms of just broad general feedback, I'm a fan of the plan. I'm a fan of the way that things are laid out. I'm a fan of a lot of parts of this plan. So really, my feedback is kind of going to just be more general feedback that I might probably say to a dozen developers at this point, which is just kind of a challenge to you to get out and see, you know, the greenest way that you can make this build happen. What are the most efficient ways that you can to kind of meet those UD standards regarding sustainability and sustainable design. You know, I encourage you to look into EV charging stations for the different, you know, the garages for the different properties, making sure that different, you know, methods for preserving water, you know, potentially like rain gardens, all those fun things are available and out there for you. So I guess that's kind of just a general challenge, is just think about this as environmentally of a sustainable way as is feasible, would be, I would say, my feedback. So
Okay.
thank you very much for coming and asking for it.
Thank you.
Mr. Sevenant.
I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth here. So to Mr. Fox's point, one best management practice, you know, sustainable thing is preserving old homes and not putting them in landfills when you demolish them. That's a tick on the list. But having said that, and I'm not suggesting, Mr. Abathura, that you knock the houses down, but just for argument's sake, if those houses weren't historic and you weren't enamored by how cool they were, knock those down, would that afford you the opportunity to lay this out a little bit differently?
Not really. Another entrance right there, but you'd have entrance 150 feet. The problem is the property's not as wide as it looks. The property's only 260-some feet wide. Not
Questions?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so I had questions about those houses too. I guess my concern is, you know, it's interesting you brought up Grosse Pointe in Birmingham. I remember when I was looking for first house and I went over there, and that was when I realized it wasn't for me because of the creaking and all that. But I can completely appreciate who like that. I am concerned that at a certain point, you know, you might hang on to them for them, but you might end up selling them to someone who doesn't appreciate it, and they are going to retrofit something in there. And I don't know if we can make it, I mean, I don't know what Julie,
That, I just don't know what you.
I mean, it makes them not very sellable for you if you have that language in and people don't want to buy them. So that is my, I do have that concern. I do like what you've done. I love the two-story. I love the different housing types. I like the park and the pickleball. The one thing that I'm not in favor of are townhomes that have entrances that sort of don't go anywhere. And I get that townhomes are sort of weird like that because you are basically entering from the garage. But if you look at the homes, you know, on the east side, those are duplexes, but I'm not really sure how they're any different than the townhouses, except for the fact that they're in twos. But, you know, the front entrance is facing sort of nothingness. So I would like to see that strip replaced with, you know, the two-story first floor master or single family or something like that. I know you said that it's very narrow there. So one idea would be to have instead of having two strips of housing, have one strip of housing with, you know, the entrances being facing the street, moving the street over, and then those townhomes that are like this, flip it and just put a row of houses. You would lose units, but it would then, you could put then, you know, the two-story first floor master strip, or, I mean, I'd be fine with it all being the two-story first floor master strip and not even having the single-family ranches to eliminate those townhomes where the entrances are just facing nowhere or each other.
Well, the entrances are facing each other, but if you notice where the guest parking is, you say there's no way to entrance them. You're going to park in the guest parking retention pond, and the sidewalk picks you up on door to all the units there. So you're not going to park in the driveway and walk around. You're going to park in the guest parking. I might have guest parking in front of the retention pond, and I have guest parking in front of the park. So to access to one unit, you're going to park by the park, and you're going to walk down the sidewalk to go to your neighbor's house, your cousin's house, your friend's house. So you will use the front doors and not park in their driveway and walk through their garage in them. So we made sure we had layouts to where, and I understand what you're saying, normally you'd have the front door, and there's no way to park by them. But with all our extra parking, you are going to walk up those sidewalks, and you can see them going right to the guest parking in front of the pond. So there's no other place for you to park except in your guest parking to walk to your houses if you don't live there. So in that sense, we are using the front doors on these units here.
The visitors are.
The visitors are.
The guests.
But the people that live there are going to pull in their garage. You're going to come home from work at night, you're going to hit the button and park in your garage, hit the button and go inside the house. You're not going to walk out of your garage and walk around your front door.
So that's the part that was a little bit difficult to understand because it looks like a parking lot, but really you're saying it's driveways.
Those are driveways, yes. So those are only for the people that live there. They're going to pull in there and park in their garage.
So those aren't parking lots.
Those aren't parking lots. Those are pull in and park in your garage. And I do believe there are parking spots. So there are, if you look at it, there are parking spots because that buildings are 60 or 70, they're 70 feet apart. But like I say, your guests are going to come through your front door because they're going to park in the guest parking that we have in front of the park and the guest parking right there in front of those 7 units that face Livernois or down by the retention pond. And a lot of walkability to get to those units. I believe the units down by the retention pond are going to be the most sought after units. They're closest to they're the furthest away from all the roads, and they have the best parking to get into them.
Okay.
And like I said, that's the reason I put, and you know, I've watched all your meetings and all the things you approve. I put a lot of extra parking in my units for that reason, that are off-site, not, you know, because I can, the engineer's going to count every driveway, every garage as parking, but I have legitimate parking. And if you look at this one, you look at the one I approved a year and a half ago, I think we have 14 or 16 spots on it at Long Lake and DeQuinder. So we have legitimate spots for guests to park at. I hope that answered your question.
It did answer my question,
Okay.
thank you.
Do you have any more that you wanted to ask?
Okay, I'll ask one more about that bank on the corner. Is that something that you were interested in purchasing?
I would love to, but I'd love to put a Tim Hortons there with a drive-through, but Brent says there's no drive-throughs allowed in there. Correct?
I think it's site type B, which doesn't permit drive-throughs.
So, put a Tim Hortons there, a little retail, put 3 stories of residential above the roof of it, and I think it'd be a great for that corner, but I don't have, my pockets aren't deep enough to buy it and then come in here and ask for what I can do. But in my opinion, that'd be a perfect spot for it. I don't know if you live by there, if you think it'd be a great
Oh,
spot.
I don't know, because of the
but
traffic.
I'm just telling you, people around there want to get a coffee, and that'd be a perfect spot.
Any of the commissioners that are here have any questions or input?
Just a little quick
Okay,
thing.
go ahead.
Just on the 2-story duplexes on the east side, there's garages, I take it, for those?
Yes.
Okay.
2-car garages for all those.
Okay, so all of these townhomes and duplexes and single-family, they all have garages?
All 2-car garages, yes.
Perfect, thanks.
Mr. Tagle? Joe? Mr. Savada?
Couple questions. One, the pickleball court, are you thinking that would be accessible to the general public?
I don't know.
Okay,
I'd have to check with my attorney on that, because then it comes down to liability.
think about it.
Okay.
And also for the different housing types, the planning commission and city council are going to want to see what these look like and how they relate to each other and how they're compatible with each other.
Mr. Tagle keeps me honest on that.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Can you just tell me where the liquor store is in proximity to the 2-story duplexes? Where the liquor store currently that is located?
Well, it's probably,
An approximation.
there's a liquor store there. And,
Okay,
the only way to get to it is you have to walk down the sidewalk that they're putting down and then into the EVA and then up and around.
got it. Thank you.
I thought you were going to say earlier that the reason those were more popular is because they were closest to the liquor store. So.
On Friday and Saturday nights, it will be.
Any other feedback for Mr. Abathura? Ms. Dufresne?
This is not going to be a popular comment because I know we're winding this down. I'm going to issue you a challenge. I'm just not really seeing how this project meets the standards for approval in the PUD. So when you come back, I'm going to challenge you to really sell me and Mr. Savadant. I don't know if he shared, we didn't talk, meets a substantial number of standards. Frankly, I'm just not seeing it. And I was really hoping this discussion would go in that direction, but nobody did, so I am.
Let's wind down on this note. So let's go over them. We're here, 2 minutes. Sufficient number of the following objectives: mixture of land uses, public improvement or public facility, residential and material benefit, compatible mixture of open space, landscape areas, pedestrian amenities, appropriate land use transitions between the PUD and surrounding properties, design features and techniques which will promote and encourage energy conservation and sustainable development, innovative and creative site and building design solutions and materials, the desirable qualities of a dynamic urban environment that's compact, designed to human scale, and exhibits contextual integration of buildings and city spaces. The PUD will reasonably mitigate impacts to the transportation system and enhance non-motorized facilities and amenities. For the appropriate assembly, use, redevelopment, replacement, and/or improvements of existing sites that are occupied by obsolete uses and/or structures, a complementary variety of housing types that's in harmony with adjacent uses, a reduction of the impact of a non-conformal of an obsolete building or structure, a development which will promote the intent of the master plan or the applicable corridor or sub-area plan, and finally, innovative methods of stormwater management. So that you start to tick a lot of those boxes. It's a sufficient number of the boxes.
I'm not saying it has to be all of them, but I mean, one of the categories says it has to be something you couldn't do otherwise. So I'm not saying I can't be sold, but I'm just saying.
I would like to come in with a different zoning, but with any other zoning, I can't have multiple projects in there. If it went to remind me if I'm correct, if it went to all neighborhood node, I can't have single-family homes in there. So the old homes would have to go, and changes that. I mean, conditional rezoning would be great, but there's no rezoning I can conditionally rezone it to. So the only one left is a PUD. Unless you guys can make one up in the next 30 days, we could have another zoning in there where we can have different types of units in there, duplexes, single family, and the other type.
So while Mr. Abathier is here, let me ask Mr. Frayne, it has to be offered by the applicant, but why couldn't it be conditional rezoned? Is there something in particular that would prohibit it?
Not that, I mean,
Okay.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. I mean, you could do a conditional rezoning, but obviously we can't, I mean, you need to come to us with that. I don't know, was there a
Mr.
reason you
Brett?
couldn't do conditional rezoning?
To what? To what?
Why couldn't it be a conditional rezoning to multiple, a mixed use, some
So
sort
if
of
it
mixed
was,
use?
so if it was a conditional rezoning to neighborhood node,
What is,
single-family ranches aren't permitted, and the houses he's trying to, they'd be permitted if he repurposed them into a coffee shop and a jewelry store, they'd be permitted, but so it's nonconformities. There's some, I do agree with Mr. Abathier, there's some challenges with a one-size-all, well, we do have a one-size-fits-all zoning district. It's called a PUD, and everything's
to purchase from, was it John's Liquor Store, a wider?
No.
No, I think you've explored that before.
Yeah, I've tried that before.
Well, the challenge,
Okay, but
if I think of something, I will
so
certainly
I'm
talk
going to give
about
the challenge
with
back
Mr.
to you to think if you have a different zoning district I could go in, you know.
Go ahead, Ms.
I just wanted to ask Ms. Dufresne, because I looked at all the requirements, but is the issue, I'm not seeing it here, and of course, the day I didn't bring my zoning ordinance with me, is it the issue that the PUD says that it has to be something that he otherwise couldn't do?
That's one of the standards. This should be loaded on your computer. I don't know if you've ever noticed that
It's
before.
that language, I mean, I'm on page 51, is that it? I mean, I don't see that language. It's to permit flexibility in the design and use of land.
It's B1 that I'm referring to, a mixture of land uses that would otherwise not be permitted without the use of the PUD, provided that other objectives of this article are also met. So it's a mixture of land uses that would otherwise not be permitted. I get it. I understand Mr. Abathier's conundrum. But I think Mr. Fox brought up a good point about this might be a good opportunity to do some more, creative energy conservation, sustainability. I understand Mr. Savadan's point about, not sending these two historic homes into the landfill. I'm just challenging Mr. Abathier to really concentrate. I mean, because it's not just this board you need to convince, it's city council you need to convince as well.
Mr. Savinant.
Yeah, and I don't think Ms. Dufresne's trying to scare Mr. Abathier or anything of that nature. I think her comments are constructive. I'm thinking back to the PUD that got approved by City Council last night, the Robertson Brothers PUD, which included 3 different homes. The first time the Planning Commission saw it, needed some work. And to me, it wasn't clear, because we saw a concept sketch like this, and to me, it wasn't clear that it met a significant or sufficient number of standards. And then the Planning Commission provided some feedback, and staff provided some feedback, and we went back and forth, and we negotiated something that was much better, so that when I stood in front of the podium last night to City Council, there was a lot of those boxes that were ticked off, a lot. So it came a long way, with much to the credit of the Planning Commission, who provided a lot of feedback. So I think Mr. Abathier needs to take the comments, go back and sharpen his pencil, and really think of creative ways that a sufficient number of standards can be met.
Yes, Ms. Mulhall.
I just want to understand the sustainability point that we have in our PUD standards. I don't believe we have really actively addressed sustainability in the 2 PUD projects, at least that I was involved in. We have never required the applicant to closely look into how they are going to bring about energy conservation, alternative sources of energy, solar roofing, green roofs. The only thing that we heard from one or two of the developers were they're going to provide a input for EV charging for each of these individual houses. But that's something that even I can get it done once I buy a EV car. My point is, that is not, to my knowledge, I can tell you, I don't think we have addressed any of the sustainability. We talk open space, we talk green space, all of those things, but I am very, very for those kind of things. And I've asked a couple questions before when I joined the Planning Commission. Why not have something in the sense of roofs? Why not have solar roofs? Why not provide that as an opportunity for residents to choose if they would like to go that route? Solar lighting wherever necessary and needed. We never talk about sustainability at all. So I just want to find out if that is one of the PUD standards. I don't think we've actively and very deeply addressed those.
It is absolutely a standard. It's B7, and this is a negotiated process. So if that was something that we should have been addressing with the previous two PUDs, it's a missed opportunity.
Yes, it is, yeah.
So,
Well, it's potentially a missed opportunity because this is a negotiated process, but the PUD standards do not require the applicant meet every standard. It requires that they meet a sufficient number of standards, and if that wasn't one of the standards that was applied, that's okay, as long as they meet a sufficient number of standards. But this is an opportunity. I mean, Mr. Abathir is standing here this evening. He's listening to your comments about some of the things he could consider to strengthen the application. There's certainly room to add things like solar panels, solar lights, et cetera. He's got an opportunity to do all that because all we have before us is a concept.
Yes, I understand. And going forward, if we as a Planning Commission can pay some good attention to gardens. I mean, there are so many things that is being done across the country. And traveling west is a good example for us to see how water deficient those areas are. And unfortunately, unfortunately, the green lawns are disappearing. We are talking about either native species, prairie-like setting, meadow-like grass areas. Those are being considered because they can at least help with the drought situations, drought-resistant plants. We need to do some of those things that
We may want to discuss a little bit during our some input. I only had one thing to add, and that is I'm glad you kept those two existing homes. I mean, it helps maintain the character of that area there. But I was wondering, and it may be out of your economic ability, but have you ever thought about maybe moving one or two of the homes on the property to give you more flexibility?
Never thought of it, and I know it'd be very expensive.
Okay, well, that's what I was afraid of, but I was...
Yeah. You're talking...
You're not that well.
And I wish, Ms. Malapa, you would have came up with that 3 months ago, even in my last one, because Robinson Brothers did 25 acres, and it would have been a perfect spot to put all the, they have deep pockets. They could have put money everywhere. And it would have been nice to have them do it instead of coming back to me to do all that.
I asked them at the first meeting, though, and that is when I was told that they would provide the EVs thing, but that's about it. And
Okay.
Mr. Fox, you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just some random tips and tricks that I've just picked up as I've been on with planning and specifically with green and sustainability planning. I mean, having outdoor lighting be powered by solar panels, having it be wired into the ground. So that's things like street lights. You just smack a solar panel, smaller one, kind of on the top of it, power it through there. I know the Water Resources Commissioner for the county is looking into a rain garden rebate program. I don't believe that they've launched it yet, but I know I've heard about it. And I believe they're also looking into rain barrels as a way of like watering lawns, et cetera. So I would just encourage you to do some research into what is going on with those, like, because with the rain garden, it's not anything exceptionally expensive. It's just planting certain types of plants that help pull water down to the ground. That would also help tick your PUD standard for innovative stormwater management, for sure, as well as the sustainable point. So I just encourage, just do some research into those little ways that you can kind of fit it in there in a budget-safe way. Clean up energy-wise the area. So
I use PEA, and they are on top of all of that. So that's who does all my engineering, so I'll sit down with them and have it do it. But with that being said, what you're new to the board here is maybe you can talk to council about maybe making this building green, sustainable roof here, library, parking lot, EV here. I mean, there isn't a single EV spot if you drive an electric car. And we used to be the city of tomorrow today. And now we're like the city of yesterday because we could have 20 spots out there with EV parking. But it costs money and.
I have gone in front of city council.
Okay, I mean, it'd make it easier for a developer to do his projects if the city took the first step and did all their stuff and made it look good instead of the other way around. Just my 2 cents.
Any other input for Mr. Abathira or questions?
Okay. Well,
Feel
thank
you
you
got
very much
enough
for taking
information
my-
from us?
taking-
Okay, there's
yes.
no action tonight, so we'll look forward to your next iteration.
Julie, I'll work on your homework.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Todd.
Thank you. And once again, good to see you back. All right, next on the agenda is public comment, and there's, other than those of us who are seated at the dais here, there's no members of the public, so we'll skip ahead to Planning Commission comment. And Mrs. Zarnicki, we'll start with you and work our way around.
I have none, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fox?
Well, I guess to follow up, it is relevant to what we just discussed. I was curious if there's been any update on that joint city council planning commissioners all sitting down to potentially talk about sustainability, et cetera.
So I held up my end of the bargain, and I mentioned it to city manager, but I have not, he's thinking about it, and we don't have any concrete plans yet, but it's on the radar. We're going into budget season, and that's kind of his focus, but I'll keep working on it, because I think there's a lot of potential value there.
There's no date, right?
There's no date, no.
Okay, agreed.
Ms. Malahali?
I'm sorry, I missed the last meeting and I did not get to watch the video. So what is this new meeting that is being talked about?
Oh, it was a question, Mr. Fox had a question about sustainability, and I commented that sustainability means different things to different people depending who you asked, and there was members of council that were mentioning sustainability, and I suggested perhaps there was an opportunity to have a joint meeting with the focus being on sustainability. I mentioned that to the city manager, and at this point, I don't have a date. He hasn't committed to it, but it's on his radar.
I see. Okay, thank you. Well, my comment is just what I mentioned. That is something that got me on the Planning Commission to kind of see the city of tomorrow be built or start to be built. And it is true. We just, a couple months back, we heard about our ice rink coming up pretty soon. And that does give us a golden opportunity to talk about how the city really wants sustainability to be part of its existence. And we could potentially start looking into some such kind of lighting there based on solar and maybe conserve water. I mean, what ways we can enhance that project to also bring in that element about Troy being a conscious city, preservation, conservation kind of a thing. So, and I'm sure the developers are looking at that, and they obviously might, as Mr. Abernathy pointed out, if the city is not really doing anything on their projects, why are the developers being asked to do? And he has every right to ask us that.
Mr. Hudson?
We spent a lot of time and energy doing the work to perhaps amend the master plan. Where do we stand in the process of finishing that project?
Draft, received a updated and revised master plan draft end of last week. I'm scheduling a meeting. I've manager to meet to go over the draft before giving it to the Planning Commission, and then when the Planning Commission receives the draft, we have notification requirements to release the draft and inform neighboring communities as well as Oakland County that we have a draft document. So I expect it's going to be before the Planning Commission in the very, very near future.
How about a guess as to the ultimate finish?
Well, the review period required by law is 63 days. So the Planning Commission releases it for review, you can tax that. We can schedule a public hearing very shortly after that. And after that, then we go before, if council decides to use their authority to, which I assume they will, they'd have a public hearing and then adopt it. So from 63 days plus, how it takes to have the Planning Commission public hearing and City Council public hearing.
Good. Keep pushing the manager.
That can be done within about 40, 50 days.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for asking that question. Mr. Faison, Ms. Parakis.
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. Fox and Ms. Mulally for bringing the sustainability issues to the forefront. And I also, we're talking about the plan, but I worry a little bit that this is going to be a missed opportunity because I feel like, Mr. Abbott, they're doing anything themselves. And if we don't have anything in the zoning ordinances, they're just sort of like, do this if you can. We are requiring things. I mean, in California, I know we can't do that in Michigan, but there are sure there are we can do. And so I think the problem is that none of us here are people on this panel who know more than others of us. But I'm always interested to hear that, and I'm definitely recognize that it's an important issue, and I think that this, the city manager and city council and the planning commission should work together to take, real steps forward and not just talk and add little provisions here and there and then bring it up every time. Mr. Fox has brought it up almost to every applicant who's been before us since he's been here, and it's really just like a FYI, keep it in mind, because that's all he can do. We don't have any way to require anything. Why aren't we requiring EVA spots and solar lighting in parking lots? And these are things that I think could be required.
Mr. Krant? Mr. Tagle?
Yeah, I guess I would like to speak to the comments about sustainability. I think maybe one thing we could do is make this a requirement for the petitioners to tell us what are they doing in the areas of sustainability, as opposed to us demanding or requiring. Now, there may be certain things that we can require for them to do, rain gardens, other site-type things, but we have to also be out of the line from the ordinance to a building code. And I don't want to get in conflict of what state law requires people that are developing projects to do. So it's an area that I think maybe needs to be explored a little bit before saying we're going to require you to do this or we're going to require you to do that. But I also think, I'm sure you're all aware, we have a sustainable design committee. Everybody aware of that? Yep. So that if someone wants to do something that maybe the ordinance won't allow them to do, if they come forward with some sustainable design components in their project, they get some leeway, they get some flexibility. So we've already got, the carrot as opposed to the stick started in the ordinance. Maybe we could look at that. But I think it was mentioned plan. those trees.
Yeah, I think it's at the last meeting. I think the city does a lot of things of a sustainable nature that kind of fly under the radar that people don't even realize we do. I'll just give you one example. When I first started here, we used to hand deliver paper agendas, and we no longer do that. We do it via email. So that was a lot of emissions. That was I calculated it was about 25,000 sheets of paper a year when it was all said and done. That we don't have to recycle that anymore. So that's just one off the top of my head. Mr. Tagle mentions sustainable development. You know, I should carve out some time and put together a presentation of all the things that we presently do, you know, as part of the zoning ordinance or as part of development review that is of a sustainable nature. I think the list we're not where we need to be by any means, but I think there's some things that maybe we do that we don't even realize we do. And finally, I mentioned earlier last night, City Council, the Village of Troy PUD, the Robertson Brothers PUD, the south side of Long Lake, west of Rochester was approved 6-0. And projects, the next PUD project that's going to go before the Planning Commission is on the 13th, and it's the Crooks and Long Lake PUD. Thank you.
And you forgot to mention that many of the members of the City Council were complimentary to the Planning Commission
Yes, thank
for working a lot with the developers on that project, and they complimented us for our work with them. So
I would say almost every council member was complimentary to the efforts of the Planning Commission.
And before we adjourn, I just wanted to thank Mr. Krent for joining me. I don't know if anybody else from the Planning Commission made it to the Turtle Creek public open house back on February 16th or not, but it looks like a really great plan there to complement the housing development that was approved just on the south side of that development. It should be a nice park, and it's nice that Oakland County finally is going to have a park within the city of Troy. So,
Mr. Chairman, where did they talk about putting parking? I'm just curious.
they did not talk about it that much. I know they're going to have a public hearing. I'm not sure what the date of that public hearing is, but based upon kind of some of the questions that I think Mr. Krent and I asked, it sounds like they're counting on people more or less walking from neighboring neighborhoods over to the park. So,
Okay, thank you.
There's also the existing parking that it's with the subdivision of 100 cars, but.
Right, and I know that the developer was
Yes.
apprehensive about.
Yes. With that, we are adjourned.